something to keep an eye out for in the 2024 presidential election is celebrity endorsements. What high-profile people are going to be coming out and endorsing one candidate or another? We've already seen a little bit of this in the cycle thus far. Billionaire, investor, entrepreneur Mark Cuban recently came out in support of President Biden's re-election campaign. He slammed Donald Trump in his campaign. But, you know, Trump has his own celebrity endorsements in the form of people like Kid Rock. I don't know if Kid Rock is beating Mark Cuban at anything. But aside from that, I was very happy to see today that musician, famous individual, talented man, John Legend came out in support of President Biden's re-election campaign. He gave an interview to Jen Psaki on MSNBC, and he spoke very highly of President Biden, slammed Donald Trump, and it's just great to see. He campaigned with Joe Biden in 2020, and he's going to be doing so again in 2024. Very happy to see it. So we're going to be looking at some of those clips from that interview and the choice words that Legend had for Donald Trump. And then later in the video, we're going to be looking at another celebrity who endorsed President Biden and somebody I hope endorses President Biden. But we'll get there. But before I show you that clip of John Legend, make sure to subscribe down below. It goes such a long way. I greatly appreciate the support. But enough talking. Here's that clip of Legend on MSNBC.
When we protested the killing of George Floyd, he was advocating for the military to shoot us in the streets. He's made it clear throughout his life that he believes black people are inferior. Like he believes that to his core, in his bones. He wouldn't let us live in his buildings back in the day. But also, when you hear some of the stray comments he makes, he clearly believes in a genetic hierarchy of humanity and is racially determined. So he is a tried and true, like, dyed-in-the-wool racist. Like, in the core of his being, he's a racist. So I don't want to hear what he has to say about what he's done for black people. He's done very little for us. And he is, at his core, truly, truly a racist. And you even hear what he says about immigration and which countries he wants people to come in from. They all are very white.
That is true.
Yeah, I love that answer. Very, very well said. And look, you know, so much to say about it, but his overall point is, you know, Donald Trump is a racist. And that is something that is consistently drowned out in the media because of all the other terrible things that Donald Trump does, all the terrible news surrounding him 24/7. But, you know, this is something to remember. Remember the Central Park Five bought out a whole newspaper page to put them on blast, as John Legend talking about not letting people of color live in his buildings, as Trump did back in the 20th century. And then now, even in 2024, Donald Trump is speaking so poorly of people of color, of immigrants in this country, saying, you know, we've heard this quote by now, this infamous quote that migrants are, quote unquote, poisoning the blood of the country, stuff you heard in World War II Germany, and calling his political opponents vermin and all this terrible stuff. Donald Trump at his core is somebody who is discriminatory. And John Legend is absolutely right. And yet Donald Trump does try to gaslight the American people by saying, oh, I did so much for the black community, for example, when in reality he really didn't. And throughout his entire presidency, he consistently hurt people of color and spoke very poorly about them, of people of different races. The Muslim ban, again, that was very early in his presidency, comes to mind when I'm thinking about all these terrible things that Donald Trump did and said. So great point overall there from John Legend, one that's not talked about enough. But I also really appreciate how John Legend in that answer is reflecting on the Trump presidency. It's not many people are doing that in the conversation surrounding Trump versus Biden. People forget how terrible the Trump presidency was. They don't remember the terrible things he did. We already saw him lead. He was already president once, and it went very badly. So I don't know why people think it's going to go better the second time around, but we already saw it. He was talking about how, you know, Donald Trump during his presidency suggested that we shoot protesters he disagreed with, that we should shoot them, that the military should shoot them. That is insane. That's insane. That happened under Donald Trump's presidency. And I would go so far as to say that it would be something that he would suggest again and actually go through with and, you know, make it even worse, times 10. All of these terrible things that Donald Trump did in his first term, imagine it times 10 in a possible second term. So really great answer overall there from John Legend. I love how he reflected on the Trump presidency. Not many people are talking about that. And he also brought up the very good point that Donald Trump is a racist. At his core, he is discriminatory toward people who don't look like him, pray like him, love like him. But John Legend also answered a question in this interview about his support for President Biden. Is he supporting him again? Will he be campaigning with Joe Biden again? And his answer is pretty great. So take a look at that clip here.
I know you were active on the campaign trail in 2020. You have a lot on your plate. Are you going to be out there campaigning for Joe Biden this fall?
Yeah, we'll get out there probably later in the year as it gets close to people making decisions about when it's time to vote. I think the choice is very clear. There's a lot been said about age and all these other things. Both of them are old, but one of them is a really decent man who's done a lot to improve lives in this country, and that's Joe Biden. That's who I'm going to be voting for, and I'll be out there supporting him.
Yeah, another great answer. I can't wait to see him on the campaign trail with Joe Biden as we get even closer to the November election. But again, I'm just such a fan of these answers. I have to be honest here. He drew the distinction. You know, he said that, Joe Biden is a good, decent man. He's old, but he's done a lot for us. He cares for people, and he's a good person. And then on the Trump side, he's old, but he does all of these terrible things. Incites an insurrection, criminal charges against him, sexual abuser, fraudster, all these terrible things. He drew that distinction, which is very important, I think, when we're having these conversations, that Joe Biden objectively is a good person, good man, family man, cares about people around him, cares about the people in the country, dedicated his life to public service. And then Donald Trump is the antithesis of that, complete opposite. Everything I just said, complete opposite. So drawing that distinction is great. I love to see that John Legend did that in this answer, and he's so forceful in his support of President Biden. He's proud of it, which I love. But as I mentioned, there have been some other celebrities who have recently endorsed President Biden, and someone who we all know and we all love recently did so as well, and that is Larry David. I'm sure you saw this clip. It was on CNN in an interview he did with journalist Chris Wallace, and he was very forceful as well in his support of President Biden, has a little comedic spin to it, especially with his criticism of Donald Trump. So take a look at that clip of Larry David as well.
So how much has the whole 2020 election and everything that has flowed from it pissed you off?
Oh, I mean, you can't go a day without thinking about what he's done to this country, because he's such a little baby that he's thrown 250 years of democracy out the window by not accepting the results of I mean, it's so crazy. He's such a sociopath. He's so insane. He just couldn't admit to losing. And we know he lost. He knows he lost. And look how he's fooled everybody. He's convinced all these people that he didn't lose. He's such a sick man. He's so sick. Anyway, no, it hasn't impacted me at all.
Man, I love the honesty. A sick man, he called him. A sociopath. A little baby. Larry David's just so funny. I loved his answer at the end there as well. But he's also right. Donald Trump threw a temper tantrum in 2020, kicked his feet in the middle of the grocery store, a line that I think perfectly represents MAGA Republican these days. I say it a lot. And he was trying to throw out 250 years of established democracy in America for himself, for his campaign, for his success, not for the American people's success. He's a child. He's a child. And, Larry David certainly didn't hold back in that description of Donald Trump, and I think he's 100% right to do so. We got to take off the gloves, Got to take off the gloves, got to tell it like it is. We have to be honest about who Donald Trump is, what he wants to do, what his agenda is, and all that stuff. And Larry David, I think, in that interview is a good representative of that, ideal of being honest about who we're actually dealing with, as opposed to like sugarcoating it, putting some sprinkles on top and being like, Donald Trump did X, Y, and Z. We got to be forceful. We got to let people know who Donald Trump is, what he has done, and what he plans to do. So those are just some celebrities who have come out and endorsed President Biden, or at least spoke very poorly about Donald Trump. All that good stuff. We love it. But there is one person who really gets under Donald Trump's skin, along with MAGA's skin, and she endorsed Joe Biden in 2020. We have no word yet on if she plans to endorse Joe Biden again, but that person is Taylor Swift. Here's a picture on your screen that you're looking at right now of her endorsement of Joe Biden in 2020. She has some Biden-Harris cookies that she and people around her made, I suppose. And she endorsed President Biden then. She told people to vote for him. She was in favor of him. And, this is obviously a high-profile endorsement. She's very popular, probably the most famous pop star on the earth right now. And she's been in the news recently in politics, of course, with Trump supporters thinking that she's a psyop and somehow helping Joe Biden get reelected, somehow magically, silently, though. The whole conspiracy around her that Republicans and Trump supporters came up with is just lunacy. It's just crazy. But she has been in the news recently with politics, and I hope that she also, once again, endorses Joe Biden in the 2024 presidential election. Her voice is important. She's a very good person. She does a lot for a lot of people, and I'd love to have her once again on Joe Biden's side. Fingers crossed. She did it once. Will she do it again? I hope so. I believe so, but time will tell. So anyway, those are just some celebrities who have endorsed President Biden. I think it's important to keep an eye out for these high-profile endorsements, which we'll certainly see more of as we get closer to the November election. Hopefully, none of the people we love endorse Trump. That would be heartbreaking, but we shall see. So anyway, thank you for watching this video. I greatly appreciate you being here. Make sure to subscribe. Sorry, just completely blanked out. Make sure to subscribe down below. It goes such a long way. I greatly appreciate the support. Also, drop a like on the video, comment on the video, share the video with anybody you think needs to see it. And as always, I greatly appreciate the support. Have a great rest of your day.